What happens when a president attempts to prosecute a sitting congresswoman for asking tough questions, only to watch her turn the nation against him? Overnight, the news hit like a thunderclap on a quiet Tuesday morning. President Donald Trump had instructed the Justice Department to pursue charges against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, not for corruption, bribery, or any actual crime, but for her outspoken criticism of his administration, which he labeled a threat to national security. For a moment, Washington seemed to pause. Journalists scrambled, pundits rushed to their studios, and ordinary citizens at kitchen tables wondered if they were witnessing the first real test of how far a president could go to silence a critic. Jasmine Crockett was not just another voice in Congress. She was fearless, fiery, and unfiltered. Her speeches in the House had already made waves, calling out hypocrisy with precision and refusing to be silenced. So when Trump moved against her, it felt less like a legal maneuver and more like a declaration of war against oversight itself. The timing was telling. Just a week earlier, Crockett had grilled a cabinet official on live television, demanding answers about missing federal funds linked to a controversial border project. Her questions were sharp, her tone firm, and her refusal to back down embarrassed the administration in front of millions. Now, Trump was framing those questions as acts of sabotage. In her Dallas office, Jasmine sat with her closest aides as headlines lit up phone screens. "They're really going through with it?" she asked, holding the White House statement. "Yes," replied her chief of staff, Marcus Hill, his voice tight. "They've phrased it as a review of hostile rhetoric, claiming you undermine national stability. They're making it sound like you're some sort of foreign agent." Jasmine exhaled slowly, leaning back. "National stability?" she repeated, almost laughing. "Since when did asking where taxpayer money goes become a national threat?" Her communications director, Kiara Lane, interjected. "We can't let them control the narrative. If we don't act fast, they'll paint you as dangerous before people even hear your side." But Jasmine was not shaken. She was calculating. "Let them try," she said. "I won't be intimidated by a press release." Meanwhile, in the Oval Office, Trump sat with his inner circle. The TV displayed Crockett's face with bold red text. "Breaking. Trump targets Congresswoman." "This will send a message," Trump said flatly. "She wants to embarrass us. Play games in front of cameras. Fine. Let's see how tough she is when the Justice Department comes knocking." His Attorney General shifted uneasily. "Mr. President, pushing this could raise serious questions." "Questions are fine," Trump cut him off. "I want fear. They need to understand. You don't talk about me like this without consequences." Back in Dallas, Jasmine's phone rang non-stop. Reporters, colleagues, and strangers offered support. The strongest messages came not from politicians, but ordinary citizens, a retired teacher in Ohio, a mother in Arizona, all saying the same thing: don't back down. "We're with you." That night, Jasmine sat in her living room, TV muted, laptop open to a draft statement. Her husband entered, concern on his face. "You know this isn't just politics anymore, right? They're trying to crush you." Jasmine looked at him steadily. "Then they'll find out what happens when you try to crush the truth." The decision was made. She would go public, not just to defend herself, but to put the president's actions on trial in the court of public opinion. Trump believed he was tightening his grip. In reality, he had set the stage for one of the most explosive political battles in recent memory. And what Jasmine would do next would change the trajectory entirely. By sunrise, Washington was buzzing. Camera crews packed the sidewalks outside the Justice Department. Rumors flew. Was the president serious about prosecuting a sitting congresswoman for national security threats? Or was this a show of force designed to scare critics? There was no time to wait. Jasmine knew hesitation would be dangerous. If she didn't seize the narrative, Trump's framing, hostile rhetoric, sabotage, threat, would take root, shaping public perception before anyone knew the facts. By 9 a.m., Crockett's staff had transformed her Dallas office into a command center. Reporters shouted questions through the glass. Kiara Lane placed her laptop on the conference table, ready to coordinate the next move. "Every network wants you live today," Jasmine said, scrolling through her phone. "CNN, MSNBC, even Fox. They all want your reaction." Jasmine looked up from her notes. "Not yet. If I go on air now, it'll just seem like I'm reacting to him. I want to look deliberate, not defensive. Her chief of staff, Marcus Hill, tapped the table for emphasis. Then we craft something sharp, clear, and factual. No rambling, cut right through the lies. Jasmine nodded. And I want it to be more than defense. I want people to see this isn't just about me. If they can go after me, they can go after anyone who asks tough questions anywhere. In Washington, Trump's announcement was spun by allies as a necessary step to protect the nation. Conservative radio hosts claimed Crockett's speeches emboldened enemies abroad. White House Press Secretary Linda Rowland appeared on morning shows, framing the move as a measured response to reckless conduct. Not everyone in Trump's circle agreed. Behind closed doors, Republican senators whispered about the danger of setting such a precedent. One muttered to a colleague in a Capitol hallway, "It's Crockett today. Could be one of us tomorrow." Meanwhile, Jasmine carefully crafted her message. By late morning, she stood in front of a mirror rehearsing, her husband nearby, arms crossed. "Every word, say it like you mean it," he urged. She repeated the line, "Criticism is not sabotage. Accountability is not treason." She paused, shaking her head at how formal it sounded. He smiled faintly. "Not if you deliver it like you just did. People will feel it by noon." By 2 p.m., her staff had alerted the press. Outside her Dallas office, the street was packed with cameras, supporters holding handmade signs, and reporters jockeying for position. The Texas heat bore down, sweat glistening on foreheads. Jasmine stepped to the podium in a simple navy blazer. The crowd quieted instantly. "The President of the United States has accused me of being a threat to national security," she began, her voice steady. "Not because I broke a law, not because I betrayed this country, but because I asked questions. Questions about where your tax dollars are going, questions about accountability from those in power." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, cameras clicking non-stop. "Let me be clear. Asking tough questions of the government is not a crime. It's my duty, the duty of every elected representative. And if this administration believes it can silence one voice with threats of prosecution, every American should ask themselves, who's next?" Her words were sharp, unflinching. She no longer read from the page, speaking directly to the people before her, voice rising and falling with conviction. "What they call sabotage, I call accountability. What they call reckless, I call responsibility. What they call a threat, I call the truth." Applause broke out before she finished. Supporters cheered, reporters shouted questions, and within minutes clips of her speech flooded social media. Hashtags like #StandWithCrockett and #TruthIsTreason began trending nationwide. In the Oval Office, Trump watched the coverage, fuming as networks replayed her words repeatedly. "She's grandstanding," he snapped. "We need to hit back harder." An aide shifted uneasily. A political advisor finally muttered, "Mr. President, it already looks like you're trying to jail her for asking questions. That's not playing well." Trump's glare silenced the room. "Then we'll make it play well." Yet, even as he spoke, his control over the narrative was slipping. Jasmine had ignited the spark, and the fire was already spreading. The real explosion, however, would come hours later when she faced the press again. Not with a short statement, but with a blistering live press conference that would shake Washington to its core. By late afternoon, Washington and Dallas were locked onto the same event. Jasmine Crockett's next move. Her brief statement earlier had been powerful, but it was only the opening salvo. Now her team was preparing something much larger. A full press conference with no prepared script, no dodging questions, and no fear. Inside her Dallas office, the air was electric. Phones buzzed, aides rushed back and forth, and printers churned out briefing notes. Jasmine sat calmly at the end of the conference table, scrolling through headlines on her tablet. Every major outlet was running variations of the same headline. Trump accuses Crockett of threat to national security. Kiara Lane, Jasmine's communications director, stood at the whiteboard, jotting down bullet points. "We need to frame this as more than an attack on you," she said, marker squeaking across the board. "This is an attack on the system, on democracy itself. You're just the face of it today." Marcus Hill leaned forward. "And we need to be ready for the DOJ to announce some kind of review or preliminary inquiry. They'll want to make this look official." Jasmine glanced up. "Let them. If they try to make me an example, I'll turn myself into the counterexample. Every time they smear me, I'll tell the truth louder." The room fell quiet. Her staff understood the risk. Speaking so forcefully against a sitting president, one known for counterpunching, could escalate the conflict beyond politics. Yet they also knew this was Jasmine at her core. She had never backed down, whether in a Texas courtroom years ago or now on the national stage. Her husband, who had quietly entered and leaned against the doorframe, spoke softly. "If you do this, there's no turning back. They'll come at you with everything they've got." Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "Good. That means they're scared." By 6 p.m., the office parking lot had become a media circus. Satellite trucks lined the street, cables snaking across the pavement, reporters jostling for position at the podium. Supporters pressed against barricades, holding handmade signs. "Truth isn't treason, we stand with Jasmine, accountability matters." Jasmine stepped outside. Cheers nearly drowned out the reporters' questions. She adjusted the microphone, took a steady breath, and locked eyes with the cameras. "Good evening," she began. "Thank you all for being here. You've heard the president's accusations, and I want to speak directly to the American people tonight." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "This is not about me. It's about the dangerous idea that criticizing the government can be treated as a crime. If asking tough questions makes me a threat, then every American who has ever demanded answers is guilty too." Reporters scribbled notes, camera shutters clicking. Jasmine continued, her voice steady but rising with conviction. "I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. That oath doesn't say protect the president's ego. It says defend the people's right to know. When billions of tax dollars vanish into projects with no accountability, I will ask questions. When officials dodge responsibility, I will press harder. That is not sabotage. That is my job." The crowd erupted, but Jasmine raised her hand to quiet them. "I understand the risk of standing here tonight. I know what happens to those who challenge power, but I will not be silenced. I will not allow anyone, no matter how powerful, to rewrite the rules of democracy." A reporter shouted, "Congresswoman, are you afraid the DOJ might bring charges?" Jasmine leaned toward the microphone. "Afraid? Of course. But here's what I know. Truth is stronger than any charge they could invent. If this administration wants to test that in court, then let's go to court. I will show them accountability is not a crime." Her words spread instantly. Clips of her declaration dominated news broadcasts. Commentators debated whether the president had overplayed his hand, and legal analysts warned that weaponizing the Justice Department against a sitting congresswoman could become a constitutional crisis. In the Oval Office, Trump watched the coverage, jaw set. "She's grandstanding," he muttered, though doubt flickered in his eyes. His advisors shifted uneasily, realizing the narrative was slipping further out of their control. Jasmine wasn't finished. She fielded more questions, calm under the press, and ended with words that defined the night. "Power unchecked is dangerous. Truth unspoken is deadly. We cannot afford either." The crowd roared. Reporters scrambled to broadcast every word. By the time she returned to her office, Jasmine knew something had shifted. Trump had tried to put her on defense. She had gone on offense, and the entire country was watching. The fallout was just beginning. Her press conference didn't merely make headlines, it dominated the news cycle. By morning, clips of Jasmine Crockett's speech replayed across every major network, her sound bites running alongside Trump's accusations. Cable anchors leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding story. Eyebrows were raised as analysts dissected her statements on MSNBC. A constitutional law professor called her defense one of the clearest critiques of presidential overreach in decades on CNN. Panelists debated whether Trump's move was a calculated distraction from other controversies or an impulsive strike against a critic who had embarrassed him. Yet it was the online reaction that truly set the tone. Hashtags like #StandWithCrockett and #TruthIsNotTreason surged to the top of Twitter trends, paired with viral clips of her saying, "Power unchecked is dangerous. Truth unspoken is deadly." TikTok montages, Instagram reels, and influencer shares amplified her words to millions by sunrise. Jasmine's statement had become more than a speech, it had become a rallying cry. Inside the White House, tension was high. Trump paced behind the resolute desk, TV screens flickering with images of Crockett at the podium. "Look at this," he barked at his staff. "They're making her into a hero." "A hero? She's a liar and they're eating it up." Press Secretary Linda Rollins placed her notepad on the desk carefully. Mr. President, the more we attack her directly, the stronger she looks. Perhaps we pivot, reframe this as an issue of national unity rather than personal. Trump waved her off. No pivot. No backing down. She made me look weak, and I don't do weak. If she wants a fight, we give her one. An advisor near the fireplace leaned forward. Sir, some Republican senators are concerned. Prosecuting a sitting congresswoman over her words looks like censorship. Trump spun, pointing a finger. Let them be nervous. They'll fall in line when it counts. They always do. The room fell silent, but unease lingered. Meanwhile, by midday, Jasmine held her ground. She appeared live on Good Morning America, calm and deliberate. When I spoke yesterday, she told the host, I wasn't just defending myself. I was defending every American who has the right to speak truth to power. The president can disagree with me, but he cannot criminalize disagreement. That is not democracy. The interviewer leaned in. Do you see this as an abuse of presidential power? Jasmine did not hesitate. Yes. History will judge it as such. By afternoon, the clip had gone viral. Legal experts weighed in across the spectrum. A conservative Texas judge told Fox News, I may not agree with her politics, but prosecuting someone for speech is unconstitutional, plain and simple. This unexpected defense gave her supporters even more momentum. Her Dallas office transformed into a hub of activity. Volunteers answered phones continuously as calls of support poured in nationwide. Emails arrived from people who admitted they had never heard of her before. This moment, you're speaking for all of us. Jasmine knew she had to sustain the pressure. Sitting with her staff, she outlined the next steps. We don't just react, she said. We build rallies, town halls, and online engagement. If he wants to make this about me, fine. I'll make it about every American who's been told to shut up and sit down. Kiara tapped her laptop. We can set up a live stream tonight. Not just a speech, but a Q&A with everyday people. Let them see you unfiltered. Jasmine smiled. Perfect. Let's make this a conversation, not a broadcast. As the sun set, Jasmine went live from her office, fielding questions from citizens across the country. A factory worker in Michigan asked, Congresswoman, aren't you scared they'll come after you harder? Jasmine looked into the camera. Of course I know they will. But I'm not here to live without fear. I'm here to live with purpose. And right now, that purpose is making sure no one can use power to silence the truth. The live stream drew hundreds of thousands of viewers. Far more than anticipated. Comments flooded in with encouragement, donations poured into her campaign, and the national conversation shifted further in her favor. Back in the White House, Trump slammed the remote onto the desk. She's everywhere, he muttered. His chief strategist finally spoke up. Sir, you may have underestimated her. Trump shot him a glare, but the words lingered. For the first time, the possibility crept in. This fight might not be the show of dominance he had expected. But the real test was not media coverage. The pressure on Trump's own allies was mounting as constituents began voicing frustration. By the third day, the story had evolved from a headline into the story. The clash between President Trump and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett dominated every morning broadcast and panel discussion. Hosts leaned in with urgency. What we're watching, said a CBS anchor, isn't just a political fight, it's a constitutional moment. Can the president really use the Justice Department to intimidate a member of Congress across the aisle? On Fox, the framing was different. Pundits repeated the White House line that Crockett was reckless and irresponsible. Yet even there, cracks appeared. A former Republican judge told a primetime host, I may not agree with her politics, but this is dangerous ground. You cannot jail people for asking questions. The host tried to pivot, but the clip circulated online within minutes, fueling debate across social media. Twitter trended non-stop. Teens on TikTok stitched together her fiery quotes, adding dramatic music. On Facebook, retired teachers, pastors, and community leaders reposted the press conference with captions like, This is why accountability matters. Her name spread far beyond her Texas district. Suddenly, Californians, Ohioans, and Floridians knew exactly who she was. In Dallas, Jasmine's office had become a hub of activity. Screens displayed live feeds, trending hashtags, and news alerts, while phone lines rang constantly. Kiara scrolled through the flood of emails. Teachers in Kansas are sending thank you notes, she said. A group of veterans in Nevada wants to host a rally. Donations are spiking. Marcus looked up. How much? Kiara raised an eyebrow. Over $1 million in less than 48 hours. Small dollar donations. $10 here, $20 there. People are fired up. Jasmine leaned against the table, listening. That's good, but we can't let this become about money. It has to stay about people. That afternoon, she agreed to a town hall in Fort Worth. The venue was small, but the energy was immense. People packed folding chairs, holding up their phones to live stream every word. When she walked on stage, the applause shook the room. I didn't ask for this fight, she said into the microphone. But since it came to me, I won't back away. If they try to silence one of us, they silence all of us. And I refuse to live in a country where asking questions is treated like treason. The crowd erupted. A retired nurse shouted, "We've got your back, Jasmine." Others clapped, whistled, and stomped their feet. Within hours, clips of the event went viral, racking up millions of views across Twitter and Facebook. Back in Washington, Trump's allies felt the pressure. Constituents flooded their offices with calls, demanding answers. Staffers grimaced as the numbers overwhelmingly skewed against the White House's position. One Arizona senator confided to a colleague in the Capitol cafeteria, "This isn't playing well back home. People see it for what it is. Bullying." Another added, "He's forcing us into a corner. Either we back him and look like authoritarians or break with him and risk his wrath in the Oval Office." Trump was still fuming. His aides brought poll numbers showing a dip in approval, especially among independents. He waved them off. Fake polls. Don't care. What matters is strength. People respect strength. But his advisors exchanged uneasy looks. They knew strength was one thing. Overreach was another. And the public increasingly saw Jasmine, not Trump, as the figure standing firm. That evening, CNN aired a live panel featuring Jasmine. The moderator asked, "Congresswoman, do you believe this fight has become bigger than you?" Jasmine looked straight into the camera. "It has to be bigger than me. This is about the principle that no American should fear holding their leaders accountable. If we lose that, we lose democracy itself." The clip dominated online conversations well into the next morning. Even newspapers in smaller towns, which rarely ran political stories on the front page, featured headlines like "Crockett pushes back against Trump" or "Local residents speak out. Truth isn't treason." By now, the media storm was more than coverage. It was a movement. And while Trump still controlled the machinery of government, it was clear he no longer controlled the narrative. As Jasmine's star rose, the walls inside the White House began to crack. Trump's closest allies began to question just how far they were willing to go. The White House was no stranger to controversy, but this felt different. By the end of the week, Jasmine Crockett's name was everywhere, and the narrative wasn't bending in Trump's favor. Instead of appearing as a commander-in-chief defending national security, he looked like a president trying to silence a critic inside the West Wing. Tension simmered as staffers moved quickly through hallways, clutching folders and whispering in corners. The usual confidence of Trump's inner circle was replaced with visible unease. In the Roosevelt Room, senior advisors gathered for an emergency strategy session. Linda Rollins, the press secretary, spoke first. "We can't keep attacking her directly. Every time we do, she turns it into a viral moment. She's not shrinking from this fight, she's growing." Trump sat at the head of the table, arms crossed. He dismissed the notion, insisting that if she wanted a fight, they would give her one. An advisor near the fireplace leaned forward. "Sir, even some Republican senators are nervous. Prosecuting a sitting congresswoman over her words looks like censorship." Trump spun around, pointing a finger. "Let them be nervous. They'll fall in line when it counts, they always do." The room went silent. Everyone knew better than to challenge him when his voice hit that edge, though unease lingered. Meanwhile, Jasmine held her ground. By midday, she appeared live on Good Morning America, sitting across from the host. "Calm and deliberate," she explained. "When I spoke yesterday, I wasn't just defending myself. I was defending every American who has the right to speak truth to power. The president can disagree with me, but he cannot criminalize disagreement. That's not democracy. The interviewer leaned forward. Do you believe this is an abuse of presidential power? Jasmine didn't hesitate. Yes. History will judge it as such. By afternoon, the clip had gone viral. Legal experts across the spectrum weighed in. A conservative judge from Texas told Fox News, "I may not agree with her politics, but prosecuting someone for speech is unconstitutional, plain and simple." This unexpected defense drew more attention, giving Jasmine supporters additional ammunition. Her Dallas office became a hub of activity. Volunteers answered phones as calls of support poured in from across the country. Emails arrived by the hundreds, some from people who had never heard of her before. "This moment, you're speaking for all of us." Jasmine knew she had to keep the pressure on. Sitting with her staff, she outlined the next steps. "We don't just react," she said. "We build rallies, town halls, and online engagement. If he wants to make this about me, fine. I'll make it about every American who's ever been told to shut up and sit down." Kiera tapped her laptop. "We can set up a live stream tonight. Not just a speech, but a Q&A with regular people. Let them see you unfiltered." Jasmine smiled. "Perfect. Let's make this a conversation, not a broadcast." As the sun set, Jasmine went live from her office, fielding questions from citizens across the country. A factory worker from Michigan asked, "Congresswoman, aren't you scared they'll come after you harder?" Jasmine looked directly into the camera. "Of course I know they will, but I'm not here to live without fear. I'm here to live with purpose. And right now, that purpose is making sure no one can use power to silence the truth." The live stream drew hundreds of thousands of viewers, far more than her team had expected. Comment sections filled with encouragement, donations flowed into her campaign site, and the national conversation shifted even more in her favor. Back in the White House, Trump slammed his remote onto the desk. "She's everywhere," he muttered. His chief strategist finally spoke. "Sir, you may have underestimated her." Trump shot him a glare, but for the first time, the possibility lingered. This fight might not be the show of dominance he had envisioned. The real test wasn't media coverage. It was the mounting pressure on Trump's allies, who were now feeling the heat from constituents. By the third day, it wasn't just a story. It was the story. Every headline, every morning show, and every panel discussion was consumed by the clash between President Trump and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. A CBS anchor noted, "What we're watching isn't just a political fight. It's a constitutional moment. Can the president really use the Department of Justice to intimidate a member of Congress across the aisle?" Even as Fox framed the story differently, the cracks in the narrative were becoming visible.